Beloved brothers and sisters, I come to you with an experience that will open your eyes to a truth many are not aware. She was told we have 3 days to prepare. Kindly stay to the end to understand her experience. My name is Truth Bawa. I never thought much about death. I always believed it was something far away, something that happened to other people, not to me. But one day, everything changed. It happened so fast. One moment I was here, and the next I wasn't. I didn't feel pain, just a strange floating sensation, like I was being pulled away from my body. Suddenly, I was in a place that wasn't earth, but it wasn't heaven either. Everything around me was quiet. No wind, no voices, just a deep, endless silence. The air felt heavy, yet I felt lighter than ever before. Then, in the distance, I saw something glowing. It wasn't the sun, but a bright, golden light that seemed to stretch forever. I tried to move closer, but before I could take a step, a voice spoke from the light. It was strong but gentle, like thunder mixed with a whisper. You have 3 days left. My heart pounded. 3 days for what? What did this mean? I wanted to ask, but my mouth wouldn't move. Then, in an instant, I was pulled into something far greater than I could understand. And then, just as suddenly as I had arrived, I was pulled away again. I stood in a massive hall, larger than any building on earth. The ceiling stretched so high that I couldn't see where it ended. The walls were smooth, glowing faintly with a golden light, yet there were no lamps, no sun, just a soft, endless brightness. In the center of the hall stood a clock, towering above me. It was ancient, made of gold and silver, its hands moving slowly but powerfully. Each tick echoed through the room like the sound of a giant drum. I could feel the weight of time pressing down on me. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew one thing. This clock was counting down to something. A voice called out behind me. I turned and saw the same angel standing there, his face serious, his eyes fixed on the clock. Time is almost up, he said. You must see. You must understand. In the blink of an eye, I was no longer in the great hall. Instead, I stood in the middle of a busy city. People filled the streets, going about their daily lives, shopping, laughing, staring at their phones. They looked happy, but something was wrong. I noticed their eyes first. They weren't fully open. Some people blinked lazily, while others walked with their heads down, as if they were half asleep. It was as if a deep slumber had fallen over the entire world, but they didn't even know it. I tried to speak to them. Wake up! I shouted. But no one turned. No one heard me. The angel's voice came again. They are blind. They do not see what is coming. I looked up, and my heart stopped. Above the city, the sky was changing. A dark wave was forming in the clouds, thick and heavy, like a shadow rolling across the heavens. It pulsed and twisted, growing larger with every second. It wasn't just a storm, it was something alive. I felt a deep terror in my bones. This wasn't normal. This wasn't natural. It was coming, and the people below had no idea. Lightning flashed inside the wave, but it made no sound. Instead, I heard whispers, soft, eerie voices carried by the wind. They spoke in a language I didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. Something terrible was coming. Still, no one looked up. No one stopped. They were too busy, too distracted. I turned to the angel. What is it? I asked. His expression didn't change. Judgment. The angel placed his hand on my shoulder, And suddenly, I was back in the great hall, standing before the ticking clock. "You must warn them," he said. "Tell them what you have seen. Tell them to wake up before it is too late." I swallowed hard. I wanted to argue, to say they wouldn't listen. But deep down, I knew he was right. The clock let out a loud bong. The sound rattled my chest. I looked up. The hand had moved closer to midnight. Time was running out. I found myself standing in front of a grand church. It was massive, built with towering pillars and beautiful stained glass windows. The bell in the tower stood silent, watching over the city like an ancient guardian. At first glance, everything seemed perfect. The walls were polished, the floors spotless. But as I stepped closer, I noticed something strange, tiny cracks running along the stone. The angel appeared beside me. "Look deeper," he said. Suddenly, the cracks spread like veins of fire. The walls groaned, and pieces of stone crumbled to the ground. The beautiful windows, once glowing with colors, shattered one by one, their broken shards falling like dead leaves. The church was falling apart. Inside, I saw a man standing at the pulpit. He wore fine robes, and his voice was loud, but something felt hollow. He spoke of peace, of blessings, of prosperity, but his words drifted through the air like smoke, there, but without substance. I looked at the people sitting in the pews. They nodded, they smiled, but their eyes were empty. They weren't really listening. The angel's voice was heavy. "They do not speak the truth. They tell people what they want to hear, not what they need to hear." I looked back at the pulpit, and suddenly, the man's robe turned to dust. His voice faded to a whisper. The ground beneath the church trembled. I ran to the entrance, trying to push open the heavy wooden doors, but they wouldn't budge. Outside, I heard voices. Desperate cries. I looked through a small crack in the door and saw people, hundreds of them, standing in the streets, knocking, pleading to be let inside. "Please," one woman cried. "Let us in." But the doors would not open. The people inside remained seated, unaware of those outside, too comfortable to care. I turned to the angel, my heart pounding. "Why won't they let them in?" His reply was solemn. "They had their chance." A sudden wind howled through the streets. It wasn't a normal wind. It carried something with it, something unseen but heavy, like the weight of 1,000 voices crying out at once. The people outside screamed as the wind passed through them. Some fell to their knees. Others tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The angel looked at me. "This is the purging. Those who have played with God will be exposed. Those who have built their faith on lies will watch their foundations crumble. The time of warning is almost over." I turned back to the church. The cracks spread wider. The roof groaned. Then, with one final breath of wind, the entire building collapsed. A cloud of dust swallowed everything. The pulpit was gone. The empty words were silenced. And the clock was still ticking. I found myself standing on the highest mountain I had ever seen. The air was thin, and the sky stretched endlessly above me. I could see the entire world below, cities, rivers, forests, oceans. But something was wrong. A thick darkness spread across the land, creeping like a shadow, swallowing everything in its path. Beside me stood the angel, his presence strong and unshaken. "This is the moment of choosing," he said. "Watch." Far in the distance, I saw two forces moving. One side was filled with brilliant light, people clothed in white, standing firm, their faces shining with hope. The other side was swallowed by darkness, figures with hollow eyes, their hands reaching out, but finding nothing to hold on to. Between them, a great battle was taking place. Not a battle of swords or weapons, but a battle of truth against deception, faith against fear. The darkness tried to consume the light, but it could not, for the light grew stronger with every moment. The angel pointed to the world below. "Everyone must choose," he said. "There is no more time to sit in the middle." Suddenly, the earth trembled beneath me. A deep crack formed in the ground, splitting the land in two. The division grew wider and wider, separating the people of light from those in darkness. Some tried to jump across, but they could not. The time of decision had passed. A great wail rose from the dark side, a sound so filled with sorrow that it made my heart ache. But the angel did not waver. "They had their warning," he said, but they refused to listen. A loud trumpet sounded, echoing across the heavens. It was not like any sound I had ever heard. It shook the very air, filling every space with its mighty call. Those who stood in the light lifted their heads, their faces filled with joy. The sky above them opened, and a golden path appeared. A voice, full of love and power, called to them. One by one, they ascended, stepping into the brilliance above. But those in darkness shrank back, covering their faces, unable to withstand the light. Then, at the center of the golden path, I saw him. A figure dressed in pure white, his presence more powerful than the sun. His face shone with love, yet his eyes held the weight of eternity. I fell to my knees, unable to stand in his presence. He turned toward me and spoke, his voice like rushing waters. "Tell them." And in an instant I was falling back through the sky, through the darkness, through the noise of the world, until I awoke with a gasp, my heart pounding. I was back in my room. The clock on the wall ticked softly. I had seen the end. And now I had to warn them. I gasped for air, my chest rising and falling rapidly as if I had been drowning. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I was no longer standing on the great mountain. I was back in my room, staring at the ceiling, my hands trembling, my body drenched in sweat. I sat up, my body weak but my spirit on fire. I had been shown something beyond this world, something I could never ignore. We only had 3 days. But was it 3 actual days? Or was it a warning of something deeper, something about time running out? I had no answers, but I knew this. The world was asleep, and it needed to wake up. Thank you for staying to the end. Kindly click on like and share this video. Subscribe to our channel to continue getting notified anytime we upload new content.